Ah, okay. Well, we're getting back into it, with the Ghost of You, and I don't want to spend too long, talking about it, because I really do want to get right back into the game, so we can hurry up and get to sort of the meat of what's going to happen. I'm really excited, and I know I talked a lot about it last stream, just about how much I enjoy this game and how much it means to me personally. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started without really any delay. Let's go to the lobby. I have coffee so that hopefully my voice doesn't crash the way that it did last time. With your exploration finished for the time being, you stand amid the lobby and begin to observe your surroundings, thinking about your own mental state a little more after such a walk around. You clear your throat quietly and fold your arms over one another as you wait for Alyssa to show her face. The most noticeable thing about the lobby was that most, if not all, the attendees of the symphony looked thoroughly and utterly wealthy beyond imagination. Your eyes widen as you notice the amount of expensive clothing and jewelry in your presence. The floor beneath your feet is covered in white and black checkers, extending up the large staircase that rests around the double doors that you cannot enter yet. The checkers are diagonally strewn across the floor. You also see many false potted spider plants and azaleas propped against the walls in their large, overbearing plant pots. There are leather benches placed around the lobby, made of the same mahogany and walnut grain that the door frames are, and your eyes are dragged back up to look at the gleam of the diamond chandelier once more. This place in its entirety screams wealth, and you feel a little out of your depth being amidst such a crowd, not to mention entirely underdressed. Whoever renovated this place had a lot of money to burn. Suddenly, a familiar, happy voice wraps itself around you. The sensation is followed by a different sensation of physical arms holding you in a gentle embrace, before rubbing at your shoulders excitedly. You turn around in the person's arms, knowing immediately who it was, and in turn, smiling at the woman before you. Alyssa Durante beams at you. Ouchie, I spilled coffee on myself. Libretto, my darling, she exclaims with an undiluted delight and excitement, and holds you tightly in her arms. You can see that she can't really even believe that you showed up, and the warmth in her eyes only grows further as she talks. It's so wonderful to see you. I'm so glad you could make it. Thank you for coming. Was everything okay for you, getting here? What will you say? Ah, you reply to Alyssa as honestly as you can without convincing yourself that you sound like a lunatic. After all, you weren't positive that you were being watched, or even that there was any imminent danger. You decide to leave that detail out for now, and opt for making it seem as though the cold weather was what was so distracting about your walk here. Oh, me too, but God, I found it so difficult to wake up this morning. Lots of all night practicing for this performance, and the cold weather just makes it so hard to wake up. Alyssa babbles, and you smile at her enthusiasm. She grabs at your hands warmly, and excitedly jumps up and down. I'm so excited, Libretto. You're really here. This could be it. I could really be able to make a life for us tonight, after 12 years of learning these instruments together. You are surprised at Alyssa's choice of words, and she flushes red with a bashful smile. Well, certainly. Well, of all the things that we've been through, Libretto, of course I want to help you. She stammers, rubbing the back of her hair. She grins coyly. I'm sorry, I'm just so happy that you're here. After all that has happened in this hall so far, you begin to relax a little, feeling your cheeks warm up from the surrounding lobby. The realization that you are here at the symphony hits you in full for the first time. Alyssa smiles at you, clasping at your hands excitedly. Well, libretto, shall I introduce you to the other members of my symphony group? This whole thing was put together rather fast, but I certainly won't be complaining about the extra cash and opportunity. What will you say? I'm going to play it dumb. Yes, oh, I'm so excited for you to meet them. I've told them both so much about you. Well, as much as one can between rehearsals, but we've all been getting along pretty well. We haven't had too much time to chat, but you know how it can be. You might even be able to meet the conductor. Even we've not met her yet. Alyssa grabs your wrist, and whilst you manage to not knock yourself into anybody, she also somehow steers you successfully through the crowds. You find yourself simply enjoying taking in the passing scents of rich perfume, old tobacco, and mulled wine being swirled in large, overcompensating glasses as you move at a brisk pace. As your footsteps are muted from the soft carpet beneath, Alyssa, in her infectious enthusiasm, reaches eagerly for the golden doorknob, twisting it to the right and stumbling forwards into the darkness of the room before her. She closes the door firmly behind her, with an automatic lock shuddering into place. Suddenly, all of the noise, all of the conversation and laughter and other such occurrences are all gone. There is no sound to be heard, and as your ears met with the loud sound of a breaker being switched on, light floods your eyes, and they meet with a remarkable, indescribable sight. You are in front of the stage. In your haze of thinking about the ominous feeling accompanied by the reintroduction of Mona into your life, you had forgotten how excited you were to be at a symphony hall for the first time instead of just reading about them in the newspaper and on flyers. The hall is grandiose beyond description. Alyssa laughs, patting you on the shoulder, and you realize that you have slightly wetter eyes than before. Alyssa notices, and you can tell she's a little emotional herself as she laughs, patting you on the back sympathetically. Hey now, you're in a symphony hall. Finally, no more busking with your violin or playing dead-end smoky halls. No waterworks allowed, unless they're from crying over my beautiful flute playing. You laugh at Alyssa's words, and your eyes and other senses can hardly take in the scenery. But despite her comforting words, Alyssa decides that now, for some reason, is also the perfect time to meet the rest of her bandmates, and thus your exploration will have to wait. You feel an overwhelming sensation of social anxiety cripple you, but you know that this is a situation that is unavoidable, especially if you want to get to know the other members of a symphony. Everyone, Alyssa exclaims, clapping her hands to grab the attention of a gaggle of familiar-looking people. Everyone listen to me for a moment, if you please. She pauses and opens her arms towards you. Everyone directs their eyes to you. You feel pleasantly surprised at the sight the closer you get. This is libretto pensato, Alyssa begins with proud, bright, booming voice, only to finish as quickly as she started. I wanted you all to meet my best friend. Hello, libretto, Mona speaks gloomily, without bringing herself to look at you. Alyssa shuffles awkwardly a little, and you fold your arms. You again, huh? A certain redhead speaks with a solemn look. Her smiling girlfriend clings to her arm as she chirps at you. Hi, libretto. Arietta and Serenade stand before you, with Arietta looking as grumpy as ever. You're rather popular with the symphony already, hm? Alyssa exclaims, nudging you with her elbow. Wait, do I actually need to introduce anyone? No, Mona says pointedly, stepping out from behind the two women, and glares at Alyssa. You don't. Arietta and Serenade exchange a confused look as Alyssa clears her throat. Well, moving swiftly on then. As you stand with the group, you begin to get your bearings back, and the opportunity to talk with a few of them. Your eyes scan the surroundings of the symphony hall after the introductions, and it takes your breath away. The seats are soft, made of a thick, plush red velvet, accompanied by golden arms along each seat. A large, looming upper circle overshadows the back end of the stalls, and rows that escalate upwards in width to accommodate everyone's view. The symphony hall itself is illuminated by large golden chandeliers, glistening with its impressive size and stature, twinkling above the stage's walnut-colored floorboards. Ah, num 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 num. There are box-shaped microphones stationed around the stage for ease of listening to the loud instruments of the group, as well as being accompanied by a podium for the conductor to work their magic. Several books of sheet music are placed askew next to the podium itself. But perhaps the most unusual of all, you notice, is the placement of speakers around the room. There are several around the stage's upper rungs, and three that hang off of b- 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 off the upper circle's ceiling. Something about them to you feels off. So, what do you think of the place then, libretto? Alyssa asks with a smile and pulls you out of your thoughts. What will you say? Of course, darling. You are my best friend after all. What with Robin traveling, I couldn't very well ask her now, could I? You raise a suspicious eyebrow as Alyssa laughs nervously, rubbing the back of her neck with a grim look across her face. What will you say? All over with Robin. Libretto, come now. You know she's just wandering about Europe looking for the best outlets for business and hasn't contacted me in almost a year. She trails off with a faraway look in her eyes. You place a hand on her shoulder, and she sighs wearily as she pats your hand. All of a sudden, you see it, amidst the chattering and the warmth. There, up above the upper circle, right in the middle, and in the glaze of the sound booth window, a pair of eyes watching, and a pair of eyes that meet with your own. Sinister, evil, they watch you with a sharp intent. Your breath immediately hitches in fear as you see them in the silhouette of the figure bearing them in their skull. Libretto? Alyssa asks curiously, but you are unable to pay attention. Their tall, slender frame, the silhouette of their folded arms, up in the translucent window just behind the seating of the upper circle. You begin to work out that the room must be a control room, or some kind of room where you can only see the virtually opaque frosted glass, and behind it a pair of eyes covered with shining glasses atop someone's face. The light reflecting off of their glasses illuminates their glare. You know they are watching you. You feel as though you are a target. A prickle shoots up your spine. You cannot possibly grow to know the other members like this. What will you do? Your mouth goes uncomfortably dry with the nervous feeling in your stomach, but you brace yourself as you face Alyssa, asking about the room up above. She turns behind her, looking up to the glass-covered box behind the seats, and turns to you with a quizzical look. She laughs with a sympathetic tone and places a hand on your shoulders gently. That room, libretto? Oh, that's just the control room, right? They recently introduced those to many symphony and concert halls the world over. I think they call them sounding rooms as well. Is anyone up there? You don't know? Alyssa asks with a curious nature about her, running a hand through her tousled hair. I mean, if you insist on knowing, that really is just the sound control room, as far as I know from these past few days. I would imagine, if anything, people are probably setting up whatever it is they do there before the symphony starts in half an hour. You look disbelievingly back at her, and she frowns with a worried expression. I know things have been rocky for you lately, libretto. I still can't believe. She trails off. You feel a horrible pang of despair in your stomach from such a sudden and unexpected reminder of how alone you are in the world now. Alyssa realizes her faux pas and desperately tries to move on, quickly. Regardless, she begins, trying to pep up her tone once more, and squeezes you gently on the shoulder. You're safe here with me, darling. With all of us, even. You're going to have a damn good night, even if I have to see to it myself. So just try to relax, okay? Whatever you thought you saw up there, I can guarantee that they were just looking at one of us instead of you. Your job tonight is just to have a wonderful time somewhere I know you have always wanted to come. Excuse me, ladies. There is a rap on the door from a woman with a clipboard and a sharply dressed tuxedo jacket. Her brown hair tumbles over her shoulders as she pokes her head around the door, looking at the group of musicians as she speaks. Her eyes linger on you, but you don't recognize her. Half an hour until showtime, everyone. Prepare yourselves as much as possible before the opening. Audience members will begin filtering in 10 minutes before, alright? Alyssa nods and turns back to face you. Oh, almost showtime. How exciting. Every member of this symphonic group is awaiting an eager chance to talk to you. After the events that have unfolded this evening, you may have many, many questions, far too many running through your head to have them all answered so close to showtime. If you do not feel in the mood for chatting, you also have the option to explore the hall. What will you ask everyone? Arietta and Serenade are the first to exchange a wry smile, laughing before they look away from each other a little bashfully. Arietta folds her arms and looks at you, while Serenade stands with a serene smile, clasping her hands by her stomach. Yeah, we did. For a long time. Serenade giggles, and you smile at the two of them. Mona stands with her usual gloomy demeanor before you, brushing back a strand of her midnight hair behind her ear. You can tell that she still feels upset from your sudden interaction earlier, and your heart hurts for her. Her eyes look slightly pink at the edges. Libretto and I knew each other before tonight, she states bluntly, despite any assumptions over her appearance. We were together for a long time. Arietta raises her eyebrows, and Serenade looks with surprise at you. Oh, Serenade exclaims, I see. So coming here for Alyssa and Mona must have been two birds with one stone, right? Mona looks at Alyssa and awaits any kind of apology that you both know isn't going to arrive. Right, Alyssa says hurriedly, and you can tell she feels guilty about the whole situation from the way she's slapping your shoulders. See? Isn't it a good thing for the both of you? What will you say? Alyssa smiles in relief and nods at you with a sense of victory. Squeezing your shoulder, you smile at her weakly, knowing how difficult of a situation this is for both you and Mona, but you also understand why Alyssa didn't tell you about her. You believe sincerely that she did it for you, to bring you somewhere for your own benefit rather than her ego, and especially from the way she's looking at you. Thank you, darling. Thank you for coming here in the first place. Mona folds her arms and looks at you in disbelief. Alyssa turns to face her, a grim look on her face. Mona, she begins, I am sorry I didn't tell you I was planning to bring libretto. Mona pauses, unable to look Alyssa in the eyes, and rubs at her arms over her shirt sleeves. It's done now. Knowing you, I should have assumed it anyway, she says quietly. Let's just move on. What will you ask everyone? How are we informed? Alyssa repeats and looks around at the other members as you stand in the small group. Well, that's a good question, actually. You see, none of us really knew who it was that hired us to play here directly. It sounds as though it's a charity-organized event. She runs a hand through her sandy hair, making a noise of contemplation as she does so. As I know you're all too familiar with libretto, we both know being a freelance musician is not easy. To be honest, I'm shocked you didn't get a letter too. As far as I know, we all happen to just get these letters through our door. Let me see here. Alyssa rummages around in her coat pocket, looking for something, and eventually pulls out a rather pathetic, crumpled-up looking piece of paper and an equally crumpled envelope. She laughs bashfully at the obvious lack of care she took with it. She hands the letter over to you, looking at you expectantly, and watches as you unfold the letter to glance over the words below. 12th of December, 1951. Dear Miss Durante, we are delighted to invite you to perform at the Songbird Symphony Hall's opening night in 2 weeks' time as part of a symphonic group. We have received many private references from individuals that have known you for many years and have been able to verify the skills in which you possess for playing the flute. If you are interested in this position, please take note of the following telephone number and contact us as soon as you are able. This is not junk mail. You have been chosen to perform an original arrangement of Camille, I can't pronounce that, as well as other pieces which will be afforded to you at a later date. Again, if you are interested in this position, do not delay and contact us today. If we have not heard from you in 3 days' time upon sending this letter, we shall instead begin searching again for another performer in time for the opening symphony. Best regards, the Classics and Symphonic Alliance. You finish reading the letter, and your fingertips scan the words that are written. They were written by hand, scrawled hastily in crude, harsh-looking ink against the paper. Alyssa looks very excited upon you looking up from reading the letter. She clasps your hands together between her own. Isn't it wonderful? I could have wept when I received the letter. I remember the second thing I did after calling them was call you. Oh, libretto, I am so happy I can experience this with you. You smile at her gratitude, and she beams brilliantly in your direction. Mona looks at Alyssa in disbelief. You got that kind of letter too? Serenade chips in and pulls out a piece of paper from her pocket. Me too. I guess we must have all gotten the same, I assume. Arietta rummages around her back pocket and pulls out the remnants of an envelope of one whilst laughing to herself. Yeah, me too. I guess they must have seen us all around performing. As for these letters, it would appear amidst our rehearsing and practicing of sheet music, none of us really had the thought to ask if we'd gotten the same envelopes through our door. I got that letter too, Mona added, waving a sheet of paper in her hand slowly. It's a little disappointing that we all got such similar ones, but I suppose it goes to show that they were all tailored to each other in the most minuscule of ways. Handwritten, too. Did any of you actually meet this person who wrote these letters? Arietta asks gruffly, folding her arms as she stands next to Serenade. It's kind of strange. I know this opening's been happening for a while, but we've still not met the conductor. I suppose it's not really that strange, Serenade interjects, pressing her fingers to her chin in thought. Lots of organized events are run by big-scale executive officers nowadays, as my inner skeptic would say, the people who actually profit. What will you ask? We talked about this when we arrived, actually. I've been playing the clarinet for 8, Arietta and Serenade have both been playing the piano and harpsichord for 10 and 12 years, respectively. Arietta butts in, and Mona nods along. Serenade's also got a beautiful voice. Oh, come now. Serenade blushes as Arietta beams at her, and flusters as she continues. Alyssa, you've been playing the flute for... Alyssa looks a little surprised to be addressed so suddenly, and turns to you with a prideful smile, folding her arms and winking. Libretto can answer that one for me, she boasts. She knows. What's the right answer? 12 years. Yes, that's right. Alyssa nods along. Libretto and I started playing at the same time, you know. And a sip of my coffee? Num 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 num. Mona rolls her eyes, and Alyssa chuckles to herself proudly. Cat got your tongue, Mona? She asks, and Mona adopts a wry smile onto her face before pretending to be nonchalant in her actions. I mean, for years it was Libretto that did that instead, so... You place a hand over your mouth and blush as Mona shrugs at a now infuriated Alyssa. Arietta stifles a laugh, and Serenade gasps. You feel as though you could blush into the center of the earth as Mona chuckles sardonically. Sorry, Libretto. How crude, Alyssa replies, flustered by the deliberate and successfully goading response from Mona. Not that I'm surprised that you would say something like that. What kind of woman would flaunt around all of her business? Mona tilts her head back and laughs silently, leaning forward to wind up the woman before her. You feel yourself blushing into your hands. Flaunting it? Please, you were always third-wheeling around us, weren't you? More like you were the third wheel even as her girlfriend, you insolent little... Knock it off. You interject almost involuntarily, feeling the embarrassment melting you into the floor as Mona and Alyssa remember where they are. Alyssa blinks, running a hand through her tousled hair as she looks away from you, whilst Mona folds her arms and looks away at the wall. Arietta and Serenade stand in awe at the scene before them. Wow, what a drama magnet! Serenade nudges Arietta with her elbow, her lips pursed. Be quiet, Adi. What will you ask everyone? No thanks. Let me get out of here. Despite your fears over the looming figure, you make your choice. As the company of your eccentric peers comes together in chatter and decision on where to put what for the performance looming, you decide to swallow your fright over the room up behind the upper circle and go to explore around the symphony hall. This is the first time you have truly been able to look up around the symphony hall for yourself besides a passing glance, and your breath is taken away further by the sights that you are met with. The first extra that you noticed that you notice compared to what you saw from your first entry is the gargoyles. There are even gargoyles in this hall, hanging small in the corners of the room, looming over edges of golden pillars. Next to them are large, mesmerizingly detailed paintings that look as though the subjects could step out onto the carpet at any moment, dripping the oils and the colors all over the red of the floor. You shudder at the eeriness of them. Only one of the paintings appears to be covered with a blanket. The paintings that are on display, however, are just as beautiful as they are haunting. What will you do? Let's take this blanket off. You decide to try to remove the blanket covering the painting. Despite that, you feel slightly bold doing it. As you tug on the material's golden tassels, you find that the top corners are deliberately stuck down to the frame itself. You tilt your own head to the side in trying to see the angles at which they are stuck, and try to wonder why. Why wouldn't anyone want you to see the painting to the point of depreciating its value with attachments like this? Suddenly, you hear a voice from behind you. How are you doing, libretto? Alyssa walks up to you. She looks up at the covered painting at your side and folds her arms as she makes a noise of contemplation to herself. You're curious too, aren't you? She asks, and smiles at you. Shall we take a little peek? We could probably at least see the title if we lift up the bottom ever so slightly. Will you find out? Yes. You lift up the cloth covering the painting, just so, and see the title is My Joyful Love. My Joyful Love? Alyssa repeats. So this was definitely a painting about a lover. How romantic. I wonder why it's covered. Maybe they had a bad breakup. Can you imagine? Getting an oil painting done of someone only for them to leave you? Honestly, I can think of better things to spend my money that I don't have on. Alyssa glances toward the direction of the stage, making a soft noise of contemplation. I think I'm going to go and get some last-minute practice in, libretto. I'll leave you to your own devices, she says as she brushes past you, giving your shoulder a gentle pat. Just make sure you come and wish me luck before the show starts, darling. With that, the always chipper Alyssa hurries down the hall, rounding the corner and disappearing from view. As your footsteps softly echo with your movements, you slowly walk around the chairs of the hall, gently running your fingertip over the material of the cushions and closing your eyes to inhale deeply the atmosphere around you. For the first time tonight, you feel almost as though you begin to feel some semblance of relaxation. You jump out of your skin, with your heart racing as you suddenly hear a loud noise from above. Without even looking, you know for sure that it is coming from the control room. Somebody is still in there after all. You feel a horrible sense of panic wash over you as you realize just how close you are to the room itself. It will be no difficult task for whoever was up there to rush down the circle's edge, jump over the edge, and do something terrible. What will you do? I'm going to go to the stage and get Alyssa. The sun shift in atmosphere has set your teeth on edge. This is your first time at the symphony, and you don't want it to be your last. With one last glance of paranoia over your shoulder, you briskly make your way back to where all your friends are. As it so happens, you make it back just in time. Before you realize, time passes in the blink of an eye. There is a bang on the door to symbolize to get ready, and for you to start leaving, too. You turn your attention to Alyssa, who hurries over to you, clasping your hands, and you can feel her trembling with a mixture of delight and excitement. Well, this is it, libretto. This performance could change both of our lives if there's a scout in the audience. Wish me luck. Her expression is one that you have never quite seen on her before, and she is looking to you for words of encouragement for the biggest performance of her life. What will you say? Alyssa hugs you tightly, touched by your words. She looks more determined than ever, more determined than you've ever seen her, clenching her own hands into fists at her side, and nodding. Yes, thank you, my dear. We will do this together, and I will play the very best that I can. Every note that comes from my lips tonight will be for you, you know. What will you say? Let's be a little romantic. I have every intention of romancing Alyssa. I want her route, so Alyssa looks at you with a mixture of disbelief and utter joy, and you feel your heart melting a little. Libretto, she replies shyly, and that pretty expression that you know of her cute face so well comes to the surface immediately. Her bright smile returns, brighter than it's ever been, you think, and she grins as she holds your hand. This really will be the best night of my life. I can't even believe we're stood here. It was a real miracle that I got that letter. You can tell that Alyssa is genuine in her happiness of being able to just be at your side. You feel a smile tugging at either side of your lips. I'm beyond happy to have you, darling. Let's make this a night to remember together, for as many good reasons as possible. Alyssa's expression becomes rather crestfallen suddenly, and you raise your eyebrows at her in sympathy. Alyssa blinks, unaware that her expression has risen to the muscles in her face, and shakes her head hastily. Oh, everything's fine, darling. Everything's fine, she insists, and you look at her curiously. She wrings her hands together, and her gaze falls to the floor. Really, it is. I don't know why I suddenly felt so gloomy. I just felt as though something was going to go wrong, but I don't. I have no idea why I feel that way. Just stage fright, I'll bet. Oh, poor baby. He has no idea. Alyssa laughs and wears a big smile, though you've known her long enough to know it's one she puts on not to worry you. With Alyssa's departure, you hear familiar footsteps coming from another direction, and feel a hand gently place itself on your shoulder. Libretto, the source of the footsteps, speaks, and you feel butterflies in your stomach whip up like a whirlwind of petals as you turn around. Mona is stood before you now, looking at you rather sheepishly, and the same gloomy demeanor that you know all too well staring you at the face. Your gaze softens as you see how nervous she is standing before you, and also note how quickly she retracted her hand from your shoulder. I just wanted to say that I'm glad you're here tonight. You blink incredulously, and Mona turns to leave. You know she isn't doing it for dramatic effect, or for the sake that she is upset with you, but more so that she feels how you feel being around her. You can hardly stand to see her in such a way. Will you stop her from leaving? Yes. You reach out and quickly and grab her arm softly. Mona lets out a gasp from her lips and turns her head slightly towards you, her eyes meeting with your own in a blur of intensity. Libretto? She asks in surprise. What will you say? Good luck. Your mind goes blank from all of the things you feel you want to say to Mona, and instead you blurt out what you're thinking in the moment. You tell her that you wish her good luck, and that the performance goes just as planned, and she looks at you with a warm expression. Thank you, Libretto. I suppose I'd better get back up on stage and set up, but we should definitely talk when we can afford the opportunity. You nod hastily, and Mona turns around quickly, hesitant to find out what would happen if she lingered for you too long. You let go of her arm gently, and watch as she walks quickly towards the stage. You watch for a moment as Alyssa, Arietta, Serenade, and Mona all take their places. The audience members are beginning to file in from the very back of the hall. You double-check the ticket Alyssa posted through your door. Coffee? Your seat is third from the very front row. The show is about to begin. Oh, it is indeed, isn't it? The symphony hall is alive, breathing, living, and whirring with the static of people filtering in. You can hear the joyful chatter of the patrons entering in waves, and you see the top hats and tweed flat capes that were not left in the cloakroom discarded to several young-looking, slightly dowdy cloakroom attendants on hand. You wait in your seat, 58C, as jolly audience members crowd around the seats in your area. The lighting is dark. You can barely make out the text on your discarded flyer on the seat next to you from the lack of illumination, and you keep turning around every now and then from the unsettling paranoia you have felt all night. You still are entirely convinced that there isn't someone watching over you, but what more can you do? Your friend would not notice with or without illumination whether you were here or not, surely. Your position nearest to the front row is safe as you could be, and if anything were to happen inside the symphony hall, you would not be the only one to be affected. The whole situation, you attempt to convince yourself, is ridiculous. You shift uncomfortably in your seat, finding it more and more uneasy to keep looking around yourself whilst you wait for the symphony, and more to the fact that people behind you are beginning to grow concerned with whatever you are interested in, and look around a couple of times themselves. The chatter begins to grow quieter and quieter, and the doors finally close. You feel the buzz in the air that the concert is about to start. And now, a booming voice says from the sounding room, playing for the first time in the Songbird Symphony Hall, it is one of our latest quartets. Unfortunately, our planned conductor could not be here tonight, and instead will be substituted by Iris and Giamata. You begin to hear a low, resonating buzz of people around you. A conductor substitute? How strange. That is relatively unheard of. Oh, there she is. Is, is she wearing a mask? What on earth is going on here? This just gets weirder and weirder, doesn't it? I never did like these small towns. The voices around you coagulate to make one curious, confused mess, and the dredging, unshakable sense of horror and fear that you have been feeling this entire time tells you something, and that is that you have not even begun to scratch the surface of what truly lies beneath. The conductor walks on stage without a word. She is wearing a plain white masquerade mask over the upper half of her face, accentuating her wide grin. At first, as the woman known as Iris and Giamata begins, the performance of dazzles you more than you could ever begin to describe. As the curtains raises, the dazzling reds of the materially astound you, and your eyes light up from the sight of your friends. They play, almost instantaneously, the most melodious of tunes, a beautiful rendition of the classic Danse Macabre, moving in a slow hypnotizing motion as they sway from side to side. Their own hands move in perfect clockwork with Serenade's voice, and the firm conducting of Iris and Giammatta leading them. You feel your body enraptured, completely dissolved of your negative emotions, and you remember just why it was that you were so excited to come tonight. You feel emotional, but as soon as your happiness comes, it leaves, and this time it leaves for a long time. You feel a hand around your mouth from behind. You don't know who it is, but their overpowering smell of perfume is not giving you any clues. Are you ready for what's to come? The voice mumbles against your ear, hissing with a curved smile, and you are frozen with fear. You don't have time to scream. The conductor has stopped. You realize that you are being watched. The hand over your mouth is clamped, and inside the palm of this hand is a rag. A sweet, almost odorless smell reaches your nostrils, and you begin to realize that chemicals are being forced into your system. Prepare yourself, libretto. The voice mumbles again, a sardonic chuckle in their words. You begin to realize that this is the voice of a woman. Prepare yourself for everything you are about to endure. She presses harder back against your face, and you feel your throat closing up with a choked gag, clawing at her wrists as fast as you can, but to no avail. You notice, in your panicked, terrified haze, that the people next to you are bleeding from the throat, large, swift gashes in their flesh, and you feel as though you will die of fright, alone. Your vision blurs and your body solidifies, stiffening as it is overcome with an indescribable sensation of heaviness and lethargy. Your limbs go slack with delirium, and that is when you realize something awful, that you are passing out and may never wake up. You could swear that, as the room goes even darker than before, that an uncanny, piercing-like sound reaches your ears before you fade, and that your friends stop up and leap up in alarm of whatever they just saw before them. You have now passed out. When you awaken, your adventure will begin. Will you survive the madness of Songbird Symphony Hall? I hope so. We have finally gotten to the meat of this game. Coffee check. I am very excited about it. You find yourself lost in a dream. Visions of your mother standing in a field of poppies fill your head, with a brilliant blue moon and a bright sun at her back, burning away through the sky. They are blinding to the eye, yet you continue to stare. A deep, dark chasm ripples its way through the fields of flowers with a violent tremble, separating the two of you from ever meeting. Despite the intensity of the rumbling beneath your feet, no sound meets your ears. You extend a desperate hand toward her from the edge of nothingness, pleading with all your might for her to help you, but she can't hear you in this soundless plain. She simply waves, wearing that serene smile you miss so terribly every day. Arietta and Serenade walk up next to your mother, taking their places at either side of her. They wave at you as well, the calm looks on their faces showing that they are completely oblivious to your desperate pleas. There is a sudden sensation of arms wrapping around you. They hold you gently from behind, the motion soothing. You turn your head, and your face is a mere breath away from Alyssa's. The way she is looking at you with a pure, undiluted love makes your heart thrum hard in your chest even now. She leans in close, her breath tickling at your ear, and she begins to whisper to you, "Don't be afraid, love. If anyone can keep you safe, it's me." Her words of reassurance are the only thing that cut through the deafening silence. The first thing you notice when you wake up is your headache, one unlike any you have ever experienced. It feels as though your brain is being squeezed by a strong vice, unrelenting in its grip and pressing down hard against your sinuses. From this sensation, your vision is obscured, blurry from the pain, blurry from the disorientation you feel all over your body. You feel as though your knees are frozen in place and your back is as stiff as a board. Please, wake up, libretto. Oh God. Ooh, excuse me. Your hands begin to twitch with the stirring of movement as you sit, and you realize that your back is pressed flat up against the firm holdings of a metal chair. There is something against your knees, and you feel a wet, soggy patch against the cotton of your tights, sticking to the skin of your left thigh. Every part of you aches, your muscles screaming as you move, or attempt to. You feel as though you are frozen in place, but with your vision and senses dulled, you cannot begin to be sure why that is. Your eyes sting as they adjust to the bright, unforgiving lights of the room, and you begin to make out the silhouette of what is resting against your knee. You let out a pained, groggy groan, and the figure's head shoots upwards. Libretto, she cries, her hands moving to cover her mouth. Oh, thank God! She weeps against you as her hands move around your shoulders, pulling you into a tight embrace. You feel the scent of her perfume, the familiarity of her hug. You begin to gradually realize that this is Alyssa Durant. You begin to see her properly under the lights of the room. Her face is covered in tears, and the expression written across it is just as grim. You go to embrace her in turn, but you find that you cannot. As your eyes begin to adjust properly now, you look down to your wrists and are horribly alarmed at the sensation that you see. Your wrists are bound by fabric straps to the chair, with Alyssa looking at you in horror at the mutual situation you find yourself in. God, Libretto, I've been so worried, she begins, and kneels down against you once more. I thought you were never going to wake up again. What will you say? Are you okay? Your first point of call is always to make sure that everybody involved in a bad situation is doing all right, but especially when that person is your best friend, one of the people you've always cared the most about in the world has stood before you, after all, and you've always known how much she's cared for you. The damp patch of her tears against your tights is enough to signify something like that. It feels as though she was crying against you for a long time. She is touched by your concern, and tucks a strand of hair bashfully behind her ear, her tears seemingly a thing of the past as she smiles at you. I'm all right, Libretto, but we really need to get you out of these confines. We must leave here at once, she begins, anxiously looking at your ankles, which also appear to be downed. I don't even know what happened. How did we get into this mess? What does this person even want with us? Are we even still in the symphony hall? You had to admit alongside Alyssa that this place did not look anywhere like you would even recognize in a typical symphony hall. What this room could have been used for was anybody's guess, but right now it was used to hold you and Alyssa in place against your will. The more your eyes adjust, the more you begin to look around, and the more familiar you become with the sterile lighting, the matching granite walls and flooring, with nary a hint of personal touch to them. The only thing that really sticks out in the alarm is a small, unattractive brown speaker installed at the top of above a large metal door. You feel a cold chill wash up your back. What will you say? Alyssa's tired, stressed expression written across her face begins to fade slightly, just slightly, but fading still, as she smiles at you warmly. Her hands rest against your knees as she kneels back down once more, stroking over your tights as you remain bound to the chair. Libretto, she replies gently, nodding alongside your statement. You're right. We will work this out together. Together. Together, there's nothing we can't do, after all. As you shake your head in a vested effort to awaken more, Alyssa folds her arms guiltily and wears an expression of an almost mournful contemplation. You want to ask her about what she's thinking, but you both find there is no time for such thoughts lingering in the air. The crackle of the speaker is one that you know you do not want to get used to, but you can already feel that you are going to have to. Your eyes glare sharply at the electrical device before you, Alyssa's head whipping around in a panic to see the speaker for herself. You both feel the horror of panic and fear drip into your blood as a distorted, unrecognizable voice begins to talk over the airwaves. Oh, you're awake? Good. The voice, a feminine, distorted sound, emits from the speaker, and you begin to notice beneath the speaker that there is a small red light. You recognize this from an old orchestral productions, televised not nearly often enough for your taste, but you know that this is signals on the air. Who is this person? Alyssa begins to ask, and you feel as though she sounds more frantic with the chuckling of the voice. What do you want? Wow, the voice chuckles to herself. Honestly, I'm impressed. I've truly outdone myself this time. You frown as Alyssa ceases with frustration, both of you baffled. And just what does that mean? Alyssa asks, and you can hear the hesitant fear in her voice. Shut up. I have no interest in you. You both blink in surprise at the callous, cold nature of the voice so suddenly, before you can almost hear it turning to you. My interest is in you. That's right, you on the chair. Though you're a smart girl, aren't you? I'm sure you already recognize that from the way your hands and feet are bound. I took extra care with you. Don't you feel special? What will you say? I'm not going to say a word. You feel as though silence is your best course of action here. Alyssa, however, does not adhere to that standard. Who are you? She yells back at the speaker. Stop playing games with us. Stop? The voice replies incredulously, and you can hear a chuckle. But we've barely just started the test I've whipped up for you. It's only been 2 nights since the symphony truly began, and you want me to stop? How ungrateful. I worked so hard to put this together. I worked for so long. The least you could do is begin to appreciate such a thing. What will you say? What do you want to test? All in good time, libretto. All in good time. Answers find you when you cannot find them, don't they? She laughs once more, and your eyes are met with alarm at them knowing your name. Oh, come now, she assures with a tone of smugness. Of course I know your name. Isn't that a little naive of you to assume that I would not know the name of the woman I have built this trial around? Trial? Alyssa asks in horror. What do you mean? Didn't I say I had no interest in you? Be quiet. Alyssa's eyes falter at the rejection of this distorted voice, and you feel your nails dig into the palm of your hand so hard that they almost draw blood. You struggle to move against your bindings, and you hear her chuckle again, followed by an aggressive noise that has bubbled up in her throat. That fearsome look in your eyes. It makes me want to kill you myself, she states bluntly. But we can't have you dying right away. Not right away, anyway. When I have exacted the experiment I want to exact on you, I'll grant your dream of a quick death, but not a moment before. So make sure you get through this in one piece, alright? What will you say? Let us go. The voice's chuckle upgrades to a roaring laughter at your demand, where you can hear that she is practically amused by your anger. You feel your fist curling up against the cold steel of the chair's handles, and you feel as though that all she is doing is feeding your desire to beat her. She finishes, dabbing at the edges of her eyes with her fingers, and leans a little closer to her microphone. Oh, libretto, she begins, and you can hear a slightly obsessive tone melting into her voice. Libretto, libretto, how you have eluded me in such a way and so thoroughly. This is not the first time we've met, you know. I have worked tirelessly to accommodate everybody's needs, or more accurately, their displeasures, but you... She pauses and leans in again. Well, just make sure, in the most traumatic of circumstances to the average human being, to show me just how you feel. Understand? You feel horrified that this woman somehow knows your name, and that it appears to give her such pleasure to keep saying it in such a dangerous tone. You are more alarmed at the answers coming from this mysterious voice, and your eyes scan desperately for something, anything that you could use as a weapon, but to no avail. This room was empty, besides one feature that you hadn't noticed before in your groggy haze, which is that, above you, you see 9 tiny holes drilled into the ceiling. Alyssa looks alongside you, and you watch her squinting past the fluorescent light. What is that? She mumbles under her breath. You feel a cold sweat come over you, thinking about how you cannot move from this position beneath them yet. Besides the lack of things to defend yourself with, the distorted voice coupled with the severity of the situation makes for dark thoughts filling your head. You think of Alyssa, of Mona, of your newfound friends in the symphony, and the possibility of escape fading into an abyss, all of those things dying a horrible death. The woman at the other end clearly notices your expression change, and her voice takes on an infuriatingly flippant tone of bemusement. The distorted twang of her voice shifts. Don't worry, my darling, she replies, and can almost read your mind. Your friends are safe for now where they are. You don't have to worry, not yet. You bite your lip, regaining your composure. You almost hear the voice smiling. Now, I'm about to tell you the part of this venture of mine that is particularly important, especially to you. I'm rather glad you woke up first. Saves me having to imprison the others in their respective rooms for the foreseeable future. You think you can hear her folding her hands. You see, libretto, the answers you seek are all within the basement level of this symphony hall. Yes, you're still here. I know this room makes it seem as though you aren't, but I can assure you you are. Whether it is quite the same as before, well, I'm sure you can be a sensible judge there, can't you? What will you say? I mean what I said, darling. The same as before, meaning that it is different now, naturally. Vastly so, if I do say so myself. I can hardly believe that people are to be so pliable in many different ways. Who knew that the symphony would bring out the very bones of the party? She snickers as though it were a trivial affair to approach life so callously. Alyssa grits her teeth. You're little more than a monster, she shouts. The voice groans. Did I ask for your opinion? I'm beginning to find you more of a liability than an asset. An asset? You wish. And as for an opinion, I'm going to give it anyway, you goddamn brute. Alyssa shouts, animated by her anger more so than fear. You're a horrible, wretched, vile person, and you are the worst asset to music that any symphony could ever have to offer. The distorted voice pauses for a second before you hear a low rumble from the speaker. You aren't quite sure whether it is a rumble of anger or of pure amusement, but either way you feel alarmed. Alyssa's eyes falter once more, her eyelids fluttering over her bright eyes, before the voice opts to speak out once again. It's funny that you mentioned the worst piece of music, she replies, and you can picture the smile that she must be wearing on her face as she talks, because I have some news for you about that. What do you mean? Alyssa asks, as impatient as she is anxious. Get to your point. Let me be perfectly clear. You will be played a song at various periods throughout your attempts to get to the basement, but it will not just be a song played for you. In fact, everybody in the vicinity will hear it. And this is no ordinary song. Who knows what kind of horrors it will bring out in the human mind? Doesn't it excite you, this game of audible Russian roulette? Who knows what lurks within the human psyche even now? Audible Russian roulette? You feel the blood drain from your face. What will you say? Even now? The woman pauses for a moment as you hear her breathing rather heavily into the microphone. You see, it would appear, during the symphony, a fate worse than death befell many of the patrons there, some of which may still be outside suffering in their own ways, and all during the marvel of my wonderfully composed song. Can you believe the rudeness, the sheer audacity of such behavior? To be honest, I wonder if you will even be able to help them. They clearly lack the refined taste to be here. What will you say? What kind of song? She repeats back to you. That is indeed an interesting question, but I'm afraid you'll just have to wait and see, won't you? The stranger smiles again in her voice, and you feel more anger than fear this time, knowing that this is where she resides. You wait with bated breath for her answer, and you hear her click something that sounds like a lighter. Everything awaits you here, libretto. All of the answers you seek, all of them, even the ones you probably didn't even know you were looking for. Remain silent. The distorted voice of the woman at the other end of the speaker sighs, and leans back in what sounds like a creaky chair for the first time. You could swear that through the speaker you hear cries of some kind, and, as mad as it may seem, you cannot work out together whether they are human. They certainly don't sound like any animal you've ever heard. Now, libretto, I've spent so many hours setting this all up, and just for you at that, so make sure to relish in the delights I have for you, all right? Make sure not to bore me. I'll always be watching, you know. There's not a time in the day that I am not thinking of you. You feel your teeth gnawing at your lip anxiously. Alyssa's fists curl up into balls at her side with a livid rage. Fuck you, she shouts at the speaker, before the distorted voice chuckles to herself. Oh, and one more thing. Oh boy. Cat got your tongue, libretto? It's smart of you to conserve your energy, really. You're going to need every last ounce of it for what's to come. She certainly loves to hear herself talk, Alyssa mumbles under her breath. If you do not leave that room within 5 minutes, she begins, then I've made it so that a horribly potent poisonous venom is going to fall on you from the ceiling. Good luck. And for the first time since hearing the distortion over the airwaves, she clicks off. What? Alyssa begins, a panicked hysteria in her voice as she clutches her head. No, 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 no. We need to get you out of here right now. What will you say? Um, Despite that you feel panic, you decide to ask Alyssa the question that has been on your mind this entire time. Does she have something to cut you free with? Something she may have forgotten about, resting in one of her pockets, or otherwise? You figure that she might more than likely would have cut you free already had this been the case, but what if she hadn't? You ask her the question. She blinks twice at you and pats down all over her body. Something to cut you free with? Something... She mumbles to herself, shaking her head. I don't... Alyssa's hand stops as she pats the side of her waistcoat down and pulls out a switchblade from her pocket, tiny in stature and not at all noticeable. You think if you hadn't asked her, she would never have found it. What? She asks to nobody in particular, holding it in between her thumb and forefinger with an incredulous expression. You can tell that this knife is not hers, if it could even be called that. The size of it is almost comically small, and you can see that she is just as baffled as you are. You think that it looks as though she got it from a novelty advertisement in a comic book. What the? She asks into the air before shaking her head. Whatever, we can ask the questions later. She flips the switchblade up, pulling out the tiny blade as delicately as she can, and you are both pleasantly surprised to find that it cuts through fabric like a knife and butter. You feel the bite of pain begin to fade as you regain freedom. At last, Alyssa exclaims in pure joy and slides the knife through the last of your bindings against your left arm. You stand up, perhaps a little too fast, and stumble, almost falling back against the seat. Alyssa grabs you quickly in a protective embrace, and you place your hands on her shoulders to steady yourself. Careful, darling. Are you all right? You shake your head and press a hand to your forehead. What will you say? Alyssa looks at you as you hold her onto her gently, your hands resting atop her shoulder as she stands, her knees knocking together beneath her skirt through the sheer anxiety of it all, and her hands tremble as she holds your waist. She blinks at you, dumbfounded at your charm, and blushes slightly. Oh, it was nothing, really, you asked, and I just happened to have it on me, so. You smile at Alyssa's coy behavior, chuckling as she clears her throat. Come on, let's get out of here, she exclaims, turning away from you. She grabs your hand to leave. You find yourself ever thankful that you ended up in this situation with her at your side. The metal door swings open, much to your relief, and you are brought face to face with the reality of the symphony hall. Where is... Alyssa begins in bewilderment. Are we in the lobby again, libretto? You find that you and Alyssa are on the upper floor. Alyssa, not letting go of your hand, takes a step forwards into the unknown. The landing that you are stood on seemingly sturdy, but the lobby beneath you completely blocked up with rubble. You can barely just make out the checkered floor beneath the dust and bits of fallen rock, and the ceiling above you is now little more than grating, padding, and boards from where the roof must have been. Around the landing that you stood on, you could see 3 entrances at either side of you and one behind. The one behind you says sounding room in very plain font on the door. You know full well that you saw somebody watching you while you were waiting by the stage there, and you have a sneaking suspicion that they were also watching you when you walked up to the hall this evening. The other entrances say layover room to your right, and the other entrance says instrument room and pantry. The only other room is the room that you emerged from, and you don't want to go back there anytime soon. Alyssa holds your hand as you peer out over the lobby, the stairway downwards blocked off by bits of falling debris and rubble. You cannot believe that this place is even still standing if there was some kind of blast to make the ceiling fall down atop the structure. What the hell happened in this place? Alyssa asks, taken aback by the scenery before both of you. What do you think we should do, libretto? Should we begin exploring around? No sense in standing around here for too long, I suppose. You turn to Alyssa's confused expression and watch as she runs a hand through her wavy short hair. You cannot tell whether it is the trauma of the situation or a newfound perspective, but you are beginning to view Alyssa in a different, more attractive light. God, she's definitely attractive. Oh boy. Which room do you want to enter? So, we're going to go ahead and save here. I know this wasn't a very long stream, barely an hour, but um, I'm actually getting very, very hungry and a little dizzy. I'm not fully recovered yet. I'm still a little sick. Um, so I don't want to push myself too much. I wanted to start streaming, but I'm still a little under the weather, so we're gonna stick to these short ones. But I'm gonna go ahead and save, and we'll be continuing this one next Tuesday. Tomorrow we are probably gonna do Genshin or maybe a writing stream. I'm not sure yet. I might do a poll. And thank you for watching and for listening. This game really does mean a lot to me, and I really like it. And I hope that you are beginning to enjoy it as well. It's really something. And now that we're finally into the meat of the game, sort of the meat of the horror, we can really get into just why I enjoy this game so much, and what about it um, really stands out to me. So far, I mean, just the general descriptions have been wonderful, and the setting is really interesting, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in the very beginning that you can only truly sort of figure out later in the story, and there's a lot that comes full circle, and it's really good. So I hope that you stick around for the next couple of streams as we continue to play through this game. At this rate, I'm not exactly sure how long it'll take to finish playing. Um, it is quite a long game, and it does take a while, which is why we're going to be doing it every Tuesday and Thursday, and then probably Minecraft on Mondays and Friday. Well, it depends, either writing or Genshin, depending on the day. But anyway, thank you all. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope that y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, and that this has been a sort of an enjoyable part of your morning. Thank you.